Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
Dan Borne is retiring after an illustrious career as president of the Louisiana Chemical Association. We'll talk about the current state of the petrochemical industry in Louisiana and reflect on that career when Dan joins us on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
Passion, experience, safety. These are what set Arkell Constructors apart as a premier general contractor. At Arkell Constructors, our goal is to exceed our clients' expectations, whether it's commercial, industrial, or facility maintenance. We have the team and processes in place to provide a solution for you. To us, every project is a resume for our future. Arkell Constructors, the solution for your next building project.
For over a quarter century, Kelly's has operated with honesty, integrity, and above all, safety. Kelly's features a fleet of quality equipment operated by dedicated, safety-minded employees skilled in land clearing, above-ground right-of-way maintenance, vegetation control, station yard and manned facility maintenance, above-ground pipeline support, and more. Kelly's Industrial Services, where pipeline right-of-way maintenance gets done right.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Dan Borne, president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, joins us. Buddy, welcome.
Thank you, Tim. Good to be with you.
Always glad to have you here. I think this is your third appearance on the television show, been on the radio show a lot. Give us an overview of the current state of the petrochemical industry in Louisiana and talk about its impact on our economy.
Well, it's growing. It's growing for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that natural gas, which is the bread and butter, the daily bread of our industry, is relatively inexpensive and very abundant. And we use a lot of it. We use it to heat things. We use it to make stuff out of. We strip it to make plastics and stuff like that. And so anytime your raw material is inexpensive and abundant, like flour is for a bakery shop, for example, and we've used that, you and I have, over many, many years, you're going to have a favorable type of raw material environment. And so over the past several years, we've had about a little over $50 billion of investment announced in the chemical manufacturing industry in Louisiana. Now, there have been other investments because of natural gas, some of those being LNG terminals. LNG terminals we don't count as chemical manufacturers. They do freeze gas and make a liquid out of it and ship it, and then they thaw it out over there.
And those are big and expensive investments.
They're very big and they're very expensive, and they're always along the coast where you can get to these huge carriers. But Louisiana's chemical manufacturing industry is the third largest in the country. Texas is the largest. Texas is Texas, and you don't mess with Texas because they've got scale. They're huge. And California is actually second. It's interesting. I think they count marijuana as a chemical in California, that, right? and they count it. But they're second because they're huge. They're a country basically. And then Louisiana, little old Louisiana, with 4.5 million people, population-wise, is third in the country in the value of the chemical manufacturing industry. And we ship a ton of that overseas. We ship about $8 or $9 billion a year overseas. We're the third largest shipper out of Louisiana. By the way, the first is petroleum products, not oil, but what comes from oil.
Agriculture.
And agriculture is second, yeah. So the agriculture is still very, very large in this state. We employ about 30,000 men and women full-time at our plants. These are chemical manufacturing plants. These are not refineries. Refineries are a little different from chemical manufacturers. We have about 30,000. About 20,000 of those employees are full-time company employees, and about 10,000 of those employees are full-time contract and maintenance employees. We call them embedded. We call them nested, because every day they go to work at that plant and they go around year-round at that plant. So 30,000 employees, they all make very, very good money, and they help support their communities, and they help support the state with what companies do, and that is taxes, community involvement, and those types of things.
And they all do really significant work in those areas, particularly community involvement. You talk about the tax implications, the amount that they contribute toward the operation of both state and local governments. Right. One of the things that's always interesting to me, Dan, is the spinoff. You talk about 30,000 who in one way or another are directly employed, because 10,000 of those are contractors who may work for the Brown & Roots, great sponsor of this show, the ISCs of the world, but they're nested contractors, as you talk about. But the spinoff effect outside of the refinery, you generally talk about this aircraft carrier that takes a lot of other ships in the fleet to sustain it, to help manage it. Talk about the spinoff.
Well, these chemical plants are aircraft carriers. They literally are. They're enormous operations. We have about 100 plants in our state. About 64 companies operate 100 plants. Some of them have multiple locations. We have literally hundreds of other ships that support the aircraft carrier. You've got to have a fleet that goes along with an aircraft carrier. And so we have a companion organization called the Louisiana Chemical Industry Alliance. Thank you for your membership in it, and all of you out there as well. But these are the ships of the fleet. These are the 800, 850 companies that do business with our plants 24/7. So you can't have a well-positioned and very productive chemical manufacturing base without very strong suppliers and vendors and contractors and maintenance companies that provide everything we need, from pumps to paper clips and everything in between.
Well, if you look at my consulting firm, the TJC Group, we employ 8 people or so that are on our payroll, and we would not exist but for the petrochemical industry in Louisiana, and that's a perfect example.
So the multiplier effect is huge. It's over 8 or 9 for every plant job. There are 8 or 9 jobs related to that in the community. So you can see how important that reverberative effect is.
Let's talk about expansion. You mentioned $50 billion or so, that's with a B, in terms of petrochemical specific expansion, over $100 billion worth of industrial expansion that's been in our state. Give us about a minute in terms of how much of that is, that $50 billion in petrochemical is either completed or underway, and how much is waiting to come out of the ground.
Well, I'll certainly count on one of your recent guests, Dr. Lauren Scott, whose numbers indicate that about half of that $50 billion, say 24, 25 billion, is going vertical. It's coming out of the ground now. The likelihood of that operating is very strong. That money's been committed, the steel is there, the pumps have been ordered, the tanks, the whole bit. The natural gas has been contracted for. Then you have about 25 billion that is in the process of being finalized in terms of planning. It's called front-end engineering and design, FEED. That's a good acronym for you. That is, that's the bowling ball, so to speak, in the python. It's moving along the front-end engineering and design phase. There's no guarantee that it's going to pop out of the python and go vertical, see? And so you always have to deal with current business climate. You always have to deal with what is expected in terms of state government policy in the future. And you also have to take into consideration your own business supply chain requirements before you actually commit that to going vertical. And so while we have about half of that coming out, we have another half that we anticipate will come out, but you're just never sure. It's like somebody says, you're never sure until it's over.
Until it breaks ground.
And you never know until it's over. So yeah, and that's of concern to us, obviously.
I want to take a break. I want to come back and talk briefly about some of the things that could impact whether that additional $25 billion comes out of the ground. I also want to discuss these wonderful films that the LCA has produced, and maybe we'll show some clips from that as well. We're visiting with Dan Borne. He's the president of the Louisiana Chemical Association and the Louisiana Chemical Industry Alliance, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
What if I said that the American dream is alive and well, and that it exists for anyone willing to build it? That the power of a nation does not reside in its monuments, but in the hearts and minds of those who built them, and that the country's greatest heroes also wear hard hats. In today's America, it's not enough to dream about the future. You have to build it. Build your future at byf.org.
For more than 25 years, the TJC Group has been helping industry communicate and build relationships with communities, elected officials, and governmental agencies. We are the leading firm in the U.S. for the development, management, and facilitation of industry-based community advisory panels.
Whether you're building a new facility or you manage an existing business, let us put our community and governmental relations experience to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
Spadel's Florist was founded over 30 years ago. From my mom's kitchen, we have grown into one of the largest florists in this area. There's a sense in our community that you stick together. Good times or bad, and oil and gas is part of that family. They're my neighbors, they're my customers, they're the person I'm sitting next to at church. If oil and gas is doing well, all of our businesses are doing well. We are Louisiana Oil and Gas.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Dan Borne, president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, is my guest. As we close the last segment, we were talking about investment in our state. Between 50 and 60 billion in petrochemical specific investment that was announced. About half of that has either been built or is currently underway. The other half we don't know about yet. We know it's in FEED, right, front-end engineering. The business climate in our state has changed. The business climate specifically for petrochemical production has changed. A lot of new taxes have been raised in an effort to help balance this budget. There are discussions about changes to the 10-year industrial property tax exemption, which has been a huge incentive and driver in a lot of this investment. Talk about those taxes and their impact and what impact they could have on the additional $25 to $30 billion of investment that's not yet out of the ground.
Well, it's very important to have a state business climate that welcomes this type of manufacturing investment. And we've had that for many, many, many years. What's happened over the last couple of years because of the budgetary deficit and because of some of the decisions that have been made down at the Capitol, there have been some taxes put on some of our manufacturing inputs that make us less competitive versus other states. We're paying a tax now on machinery and equipment. We buy a lot of that. We're paying a tax on natural gas and electricity. We buy a lot of that. We're paying some other taxes as well that were not paid early on when these projects were announced. And so what remains to be seen is how the state's going to deal with either renewing these taxes or setting up a tax structure that is both fair and as an inducement for this type of manufacturing. So the point I'm making to all the folks I speak with is that capital dollars do not like uncertainty. They tend to flee from uncertainty. And there was a lot of certainty when these commitments were announced. But you have about $25 billion worth of investment that's hovering to see what comes next. And if what comes next is not decided soon, then some of these investments are prone to go other places. Because as I said, capital dollars, as Dr. Scott likes to say too, capital dollars have feet they can walk. So we're working closely with the state to come up with some design that gives us some certainty, that gives us some predictability when it comes to this $25 or $6 billion worth of investment that's not yet broken ground.
25 or $26 billion worth of investment, and critically the corresponding jobs that go along with them for Louisiana families. So we'll keep a close eye on that, Dan. I want to talk about two wonderful films that the Louisiana Chemical Association has recently produced. Short films, informative, they're interesting. I've had an opportunity to see them on a couple of occasions. The first film is called Heroes on the Home Front. It chronicles Louisiana's engagement, Louisiana's petrochemical and industry engagement in winning World War II. A beautiful film. Give us 30 seconds on that, and then let's watch a clip from it.
Well, over at the World War II Museum, there's this grand room, and if you walk around that room, you can very easily connect so many of the things in that room to manufacturing in Louisiana during World War II. And so we put together a little video of that. It runs about 5 minutes. It's called Heroes on the Home Front, and it highlights the heroes that stayed at home, that were working in oil and gas and chemical manufacturing and boat building to help win World War II.
Let's take a look at a clip from Heroes on the Home Front.
Thousands of men and women helped fight America's enemies across the world from right here in Louisiana as part of our chemical industry. They fought the war with hard hats instead of helmets. They attacked the Axis powers with rivets instead of rifles. They helped win battles with crude oil and chemical engineering instead of combat boots. Their ingenuity, their resolve, and their unquenchable spirit produced weapons that helped win the war. Spitfires, like this one, dominated the air war over Britain long before the great land battles were fought. It was the tetraethyl lead and high-octane aviation fuel manufactured upriver in Baton Rouge by Ethel and Standard Oil that helped give those Spitfires the power, maneuverability, and altitude they needed to outduel the stronger and better armed German Messerschmitts.
That is just exceptionally well done. Two things that I have taken away from that film, Dan, particularly the jet fuels, the airplane fuels that were manufactured here that helped us win the war, the synthetic rubber that was produced right here, really critical in helping helping the United States and our allies win World War II.
Well, yeah, high-octane gasoline that went into the airplanes, and the tetraethyl lead that helped jack up those engines, synthetic rubber that was made here at Baton Rouge and in Lake Charles, by the way. We also had oils and greases that were made at the Chevron Oronite plant down in below New Orleans. It has a rich history of helping to win the war, and of course the Higgins boat, which was powered by gasoline and diesel, that was refined right here in Louisiana.
I love the statement that you make in the film that the last piece of America that these boys touched before they went across was a boat that was made right here in Louisiana. The second film, Producing a New America, sort of picks up at the end of World War II and talks about the wonderful products that helped drive the economy in the United States that were helped or were originated right here. Let's take a look at a clip from Producing a New America.
Chemicals, yes, lots of chemicals, went into the thousands of new products that were developed over the following decades. Products that made our lives easier, healthier, and our lifespans longer. Dozens of chemical plants began popping up amid the sugarcane fields on both sides of the Mississippi River, the aorta of American commerce, and in southwest Louisiana, where the Calcasieu Basin provides another vital artery to the oceans of the world and lucrative overseas export markets. These huge complexes are akin to aircraft carriers that depend on other ships of the fleet in order to operate. Hundreds of companies were formed to supply the plants with everything they needed, from engineering and design, to pumps and pipes, to construction and maintenance services. Thousands of Louisiana citizens went to work at the plants. They spent their entire careers producing the chemical building blocks that went into every conceivable consumer product. They provided well for their families, and their children had bright futures that could not have been imagined before.
The chemical industry in Louisiana, critically important, not only to winning the war, but to growing our economy since then. If folks are interested in seeing these films, Dan, how can they access them?
Well, we premiered the second film a couple of weeks ago. They'll be on our website, www.lca.org, lca.org, and we're producing a third film, a prequel, that will highlight the discovery of oil to the beginning of World War II. So we'll have a trifecta or hat trick before it's over.
Let's take a break and then let's reflect on what has been a wonderful 28-year career for you at the LCA. We're visiting with Dan Borne, the president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Promoting workplace safety and family wellness. That's our motto at Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. The Gulf Coast staff is made up of some of the most knowledgeable and hardest working medical professionals in Louisiana. We care about your safety and your bottom line. With 8 convenient locations in the greater Baton Rouge area, our services include injury management, physical exams, medical surveillance, and substance abuse testing. For more information, visit us on the web at gcombr.info and ride the wave to safety.
For more than 20 years, the TJC Group has been helping companies assess their training needs and to develop programs that improve the effectiveness and productivity of their teams.
Training doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. Let us put our experience and expertise to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
What if I said that whatever good things you build you? And that in this economy, sweat never loses its value? What if I said that there isn't a challenge in the world too great for a craft professional with the right tools, and that the steps that lead from where you are to where you want to be can only be built by you? Build your future at byf.org.
Keene Miller traces its roots to the dawn of the petrochemical industry in Louisiana. As the legal needs of the sector grew, our firm emerged as a leader in environmental law, economic development, real estate, employment, utilities regulations, and more. Today, these same clients and those new to our state continue to rely upon the firm and its attorneys for creative ideas, practical advice, and Louisiana know-how. Industrial strength law. Learn more at keenemiller.com.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Dan Borne, president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, is our guest. Recent flooding in Louisiana, a little bit different in terms of how it impacted the industry as compared to Katrina, but it was a significant impact. Let's talk about the impact just briefly, and then talk about how critical the industry and its products have been for the cleanup and recovery.
Well, lots of our employees were impacted, and lots of our contract employees were impacted. The difference between the two big occurrences, Katrina shut down a lot of plants. Electricity was lost, natural gas supplies were curtailed. Generally, with the flood, the plants kept running. And so it was up to the plants to make sure that those employees who were so devastatingly impacted had opportunities to begin the rebuild and the restoration of their lives. And so lots and lots of things were done to help these employees because their jobs were still there. The plants were still running.
Paid time off, low interest
lots
loans,
of things.
no interest loans. They just really did some nice things.
Right, and so, we have about 2/3 of our investment between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and a whole lot of employees were affected. The key is to keep those employees focused when they are at work so that they're focused on safety, and all of our plants are working on that. What's interesting, though, is that you have this sidebar where the products that these employees make go into products that they use to help clean up the messes at their homes. All the disinfectants, all of the bactericides, safety glasses, respirators, those things all find their origin in chemical manufacturing here in Louisiana. And once those homes were cleaned up, the rebuild of those homes also find themselves right here, beginning in chemical manufacturing in Louisiana. Vinyl, siding, paints, you name it, floor coverings, carpet backing. It goes on and on and on. We like to say, if you can name it, chemicals help make it. And the very employees who were affected by this storm had a role in producing the products that helped them clean up their homes and restore their lives.
It's a great story, and one that I'm always proud to highlight in terms of those products and how they impact our daily lives, and specifically how they impacted that cleanup and rebuild. I I don't know of any one person, Dan, who has had more of an important role or a greater impact on the chemical industry in Louisiana over the last 30 years than Dan Borne has. You have been a mentor to me. I have learned so much from you. You've announced your retirement. I think January or so of next year you will be done. Let's reflect on what has been an illustrious career for you as president of the LCA. Give us some of the highlights in your mind, some of the things you're most proud of.
Well, I want to thank you for that. I appreciate it. I would never say those things about myself.
I know you wouldn't.
But I have to say that any accomplishment that I would highlight wouldn't be a personal accomplishment. It would be an accomplishment of a tremendous group of folks that I've had the privilege of working with over the years. And that starts with some strong board members. Tim, I believe that good governance breeds good management. And to whatever extent we have been successful in managing the association on behalf of our members, it's because we've had strong board members who are bosses at their locations, who don't get nervous when they have to make critical decisions. And so I believe that the product of good association work begins with good governance. The second thing is for folks who work for associations to understand that they exist because of the members. The members don't exist because of them. Right. Okay? So once you get that priority in place, and the purpose of your job is to make sure your members are adequately and appropriately represented, and you have good governance, those things fall in line. We leave it in good hands. Greg Bowser, who's been my wingman for 25 years, is the new president of Louisiana Chemical Association and of the LCIA, and he will formally assume that role on January 1st. With him will be a staff, 4 of whom have over 20 years of experience with the LCA and the LCIA. And so I think as you look back during good times and bad times and now better times because of the industry, the one thing that we can point to is stability in the association workforce and a very, very strong, deep understanding of those factors that propel chemical manufacturing in the state and those things that might tend to impede its growth. That's what I think we will leave with the LCA. That's the group that I know Greg will lead and lead well, and he'll have a lot of members who are willing to help him.
Bowser's got big shoes to fill, but he's got big feet, so I know he'll do well. And a great team there, really is a great team. And I know as you're a lot like me from this perspective, the relationships are one of the things that you take away. We got about 20 seconds left. What's next for Dan Borne?
Well, I want to finish that film, get that prequel going. We have a number of projects too that might be available to work with respect to chemical manufacturing that we're looking at down the road. And I hope to play a role in that. Not quite ready to announce it yet, but one has to do with the history of this industry during World War II and how that can be expanded to help encourage young people.
Well, listen, brother, thanks for all you've done for the industry. Thanks for all you've done for me personally. It's been great, and I look forward to working with you more as we go along.
Thanks, Tim. It's been a pleasure.
That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.